Welcome to the Athena Utah Launch Complex blockhouse, what's left of it. It's obviously a reinforced concrete structure with no windows, and we have 3 launch pads outside within 150 to 200 yards of this blockhouse. All 3 launch pads are connected to this blockhouse, so you can see some of the cable runs. But typically there were 3 duplicate cable runs, 1 from each launch pad. In this blockhouse, when we would seal the blockhouse at T-minus 55 minutes, and at that point in time the missile or missiles would be armed and ready to go. And so everyone was required to be in the blockhouse, and the security area then extended all the way down the road back to where the Met station is. That we came by a little while ago. So that's what, about a mile down the road, mile and a half?
Yeah, it wasn't.
So the entire area then was secured back to there. In this blockhouse, I'm going to guesstimate we probably had around 40 people or so in this blockhouse. There were rows of instrumentation cabinets. This doesn't really show up very well anymore, but there was a row over there and there was another row here. So they went from wall to wall. Over on my left here then was a row of consoles. And so we had people sitting at those consoles whose job was to monitor different subsystems of the missile. And so, for example, we would have telemetry people in here. We would have power system people, guidance people for the guidance system. They're checking out final checks on the guidance system. We had mostly contractor people in here. The contractor owned, so to speak, the missile until launch.
ARC then?
ARC then, yeah, at that time, or later on Celesco. And so it was their missile, they put it together, they checked it out, and they vouched for its readiness. And they owned it right down till first motion on the launcher, and at that point the government accepted the missile, and then the Army and the Air Force owned it after it left the rails. So the Air Force representative sat in the far back over here, right around that corner, and there was room, I think, for 4 or 5 of us. There wasn't much room in here for anybody other than, you know, the contractor crew that was readying the missile to go. The contractor hit the launch button here, and then we owned it at that point.
So what does that mean? We owned it, so what was going on in the blockhouse after that ownership point?
So after the ownership point, the blockhouse had data displays on the performance of the missile. The very same data was being displayed down at White Sands, also in the Mission Control Center. They had more detailed data here than we had downrange, but downrange we had the essential information on how the missile was performing. That was coming back via telemetry.
Mm-hmm.
And then in addition, downrange we had all the radar tracks and that sort of thing.
How many people would have been in here for a typical mission?
For a typical mission, around 40 people.
40 inside this building?
Yeah, inside this building here.
Pretty full.
Pretty full, yeah, pretty full. About 5 Air Force project people, and the rest would be contractors. Missile range people, there'd be some missile range civilians here. People that were responsible for the meteorology, they would be here. I think we had people here from range operations, for example, the frequency monitoring people who were talking to their people on the hill. So from T-minus 55 minutes to launch, we were basically in a checklist, item, 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 item. And it was a very detailed checklist. The test conductor was at White Sands, and that was an Air Force colonel. He was called the test conductor, and he was the go, no-go person from the Air Force side. The Army had a go, no-go person from range safety. And so the checklist then was cleared by the test conductor at White Sands, but we all had notebooks that had all the steps in it, and we had to, you know, the clear plastic, and you check it off with a grease pencil. And any one of those things could cause a hold, and then if you had a hold after T-minus 55, there were all sorts of events that would start to time out. So we had batteries on the missile that were now running, that had a finite life. We had roadblocks down at White Sands that had been closed and could only be closed for so long. We had trains that were running down the train track. So from T-minus 55 minutes to launch, things were pretty intense in this blockhouse here.